Okay, it looks like we are live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the presentation for 912 to 920 King Street and 116 South Henry. My name is Omar Abdulbaki. I am your host for this evening from Galena Capital Partners, and I've got with me on the telephone Mary Catherine Gibbs from Wire Gill. Good morning, good evening, rather, Mary Catherine.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Making it through the day. Actually, right before we got on the phone, as you may know, I know you're up in Chicago at the moment, but we got a couple of blasts through the cell phone of the stay-in-place order from the governors of Maryland, I think, and Virginia both declared that. So, I've
I
made sure to
heard
put my
that.
phone on silence so nobody will be hearing those
Yeah.
buzzes as they come in. But it's just a reflection of the times that we're in right now. And I just want to start by expressing our appreciation to everybody that's tuning in and participating, because this is an interesting situation that we're in. Normally we would be having this meeting in person with everybody in the room. We'd be able to shake hands. We'd be able to show people, and point to things, on stage. And we can't do that tonight. But we think that this is a great opportunity to leverage technology, just as every industry and government is trying to do to keep things moving and to keep life functioning. Because I think there's only so many times we can rerun the office at home. At some point, we got to actually get out and do some work, and that's what we all want to do. So I'm excited to share this with you this evening. And again, thank you for tuning in and participating as we go on. I just want to start with a couple of real basic introductions. I want to share with you the members of our project team. Galena Capital Partners, that we are based in Old Town Alexandria. We're the developer of the project. We've been here for a long time. I saw in a news article this morning on Alexandria Living magazine about this live broadcast that they I guess Googled us and found a group called Galena Capital from Boise, Idaho. That is not us. No disrespect to them, but we're Old Town, always have been. And always will be. Have developed a number of projects over the years around the DC area. A recent one in Old Town that you might be familiar with on South Patrick Street between Prince and Duke Street. We built some townhouses there. It's just a block or two from these properties, incidentally. So go check them out if you'd like to. Next up on our architects position, we've got Winstanley Architects and Planners. You may know them from their design work on the Old Dominion Boat Club. It's a high-profile project down on the water. It's a beautiful building. They're also helping develop 1300 King Street. They're in the design seat there as well. It looks really exciting. RC Fields is our site engineer. They're ubiquitous across the city. We've worked with them for many years, and we're glad to have them on site as well on the team. Wire Gill, Land Use Council. You may know Bud Hart, who's really a fixture in the city and has done so much to contribute to its well-being over the decades. We're really glad to have him and his partner, Mary Catherine Gibbs, who's on the telephone this evening with us. And then last but not least, Artemel and Associates. This is a husband and wife team that's been in and around the city for decades as well. They do a number of things on this project, including community outreach. And they're also the nexus of this project. Engin and Agnes brought these properties to us to talk about 5 years ago almost. It was 2015, so we've been in it for quite a while. And we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. I just want to emphasize that this group is all Alexandria. We're all based here from a business perspective. Many of us live here in Alexandria, and some of us have even grown up here. And when I look at this project in general, I just see a committed team that's really devoted to delivering something that's going to make everybody proud in town and add something a little bit special to this particular section of town. So I hope you feel the same at the end of this presentation. So let's talk a little bit about how this is going to proceed this evening. You're watching me on YouTube. Congratulations. We want you not to make this a one-way broadcast. We want your feedback. We want your input. both during this presentation and anytime thereafter. We've thrown up there 3 different ways to get in touch with us, and I'll just say before I rattle those off, down in the description below of this video, you'll see a place where you can click Show More. If you're on a computer, if you're on an iPad, I believe there's a down arrow below where the description says, welcome to the presentation. And you can see these same email, Twitter, text contacts. So you don't have to get a pen. It's right there for you. You can refer to it at any time. So you can email us at kingstreetproject@outlook.com. You can send us a tweet at KingSTProject. That's King Street Project with the street shortened. Or you can send us a text or drop us a voicemail, 703-951-3998. In the case of voicemail, I don't know if we'll be able to transcribe and read out those messages, during this broadcast, but we'll certainly collect those, get back to you individually, directly, and also collect those that feedback and aggregate it with everything else we get. And when it's time to share, we'll put that out to everybody as well. So please feel free to use any of those methods to get in touch with us again during this broadcast or anytime thereafter. Also in the description, I've included a link to the City Development Department website. This is a great resource for anybody who's looking to see the kinds of projects that are coming through the city and that are in process. So you can use that to your benefit to see both that you can see the plans that we've submitted for our projects and those of other projects that are happening around the city. So please, use that. It's a great resource that the city has made available. And last thing before we get into the meat of the presentation, I just wanted you to know this is not the only time you'll be able to actually watch this material and participate with us. As I've said, you can certainly contact us anytime thereafter. But also, when this is wrapped up tonight, we will make sure that this copy of this stream is posted up on our channel, so you can come back to it at any time and watch it again, watch components of it, or share it with anybody else and give them the chance to watch it. We'd really appreciate that you spread the word that this is out there, and we'll certainly get out there and try and make sure that people that couldn't make it tonight can certainly still view the material and be part of the process here. So with respect to that, if you do have a YouTube or a Google account, you can click the subscribe button. It's a big red button down below the video, which will keep you up to date. It'll basically put this channel in your favorites section. If you don't have an account with one of those 2 services, you can create one. It's not too difficult. Doesn't take too long. And if you do subscribe, there's a little bell that appears next to that. Once you do that, that will give you a notification anytime we post new material here. So it's a great way to keep up to date. Okay. So the formalities aside, let's talk about the actual project. I think that the timeline for us, as I mentioned, we came into it around 2015, but actually the project's nexus really is back in 2008. The city declared both of these properties surplus, which essentially means that they put them up for sale pending an offer from a third party that they felt met their criteria for a viable sale. That ended up being us in 2016. We visited with the city in 2015 to kind of understand the parameters of the project and got an understanding of sort of some of the challenges associated with it. And we're going to go over some of those challenges and show you how we got over them in the next few slides. But we submitted a formal offer in 2016, which they accepted, and that kicked off a whole process that traveled all the way through to the end of 2019, which involved a full RFP process, request for proposal process, in which the city invited any and all comers to give competing offers, and due diligence after we were selected in that process. At the end, we had to perform some due diligence. We had to work on contracts for the actual purchase and sale, and that kind of took us all the way to the end of 2019 when council approved that contract. Between then and now, we've basically been working on design development, and that's what you're going to see from us tonight. So just a couple of high points about what our offer really focused on. First and foremost, parking was a chief concern of the cities. There were 67 parking spaces that are striped out there right now, and they wanted to make sure they didn't lose any of those and increase it if they could. And we did a little bit more than that. We not only increased the parking, but we also added enough parking to cover all other uses that we had with no exception. And I think that's something that was a real strong point of what we offered. And in addition, we kind of focused on making sure that we offered high quality retail on both of these two properties. And you'll see why that's actually of interest because of the challenges that face these sites to begin with. We've also added quite a number of residential units to these two sites. Originally, it was 52 in our offer. It's become 49 now that we've done some of the final architecture and really understood kind of how the space on the inside is going to have to lay out. So we've got 49 residential units, and I want to emphasize that most of them are quite small units. This is a project in our mind that could have certainly been one that a developer would come and say, well, let's build a couple of really lavish condominiums because these are, in a good spot in town. And we don't think that way. What we wanted to do was actually add life and activity on the street. So we built this project with the intention of bringing people who wanted to live their lives on the street in this really great and vibrant section of town and make it even more vibrant. So that really was the driving force behind how we engineered these properties and the buildings that you're going to see coming up from now. Okay, so before we get to the actual layout of those buildings and showing you the outside and the renderings, we want to talk about parking because parking was the number one concern here, as I mentioned before. And the two sites are actually pretty tough to park logistically. The site dimensions just don't really work very easily for ramps and turning radiuses and everything else. And King Street especially was going to be a little complicated. It was sort of expected that the Henry Street property would take on the burden of parking. I think most specifically because the King Street parcel, you didn't want to sacrifice ground floor space with ramps and other things that would take up and take away from the ability to use that for a better use, being right on King. So the big issue with Henry also is that it's still, you can see this very unusual shape that it takes. It doesn't have a lot of width, so fitting traditional parking ramps, as I said, turn radiuses, everything else into that site was difficult. In addition, to be able to put in the number of spaces that you really need to meet all of the uses that someone would want to put here really meant with a height restriction, you were going to have to go down into the ground quite significantly, and that was going to have a major financial impact, I think, on anyone that pursued that course. And then last but definitely not least, the visual impact. I mean, this is a concrete deck, no matter how you dress it up with bricks and something else, it's still a concrete deck, and it's just not attractive to look at. And this site is very visible from the corner where Conti's Bike Shop is as you walk down the street. You can see it right there on the right. And, we felt from the very beginning that it would not be suitable to put a concrete garage here or a traditional parking garage here. It would deaden the block, and the city certainly echoed that when they would talk to us initially about this project. And their hope was that we would be able to come up with some kind of use there and still maintain parking numbers, and we were able to do that. So let me show you what we did. We took this space in the middle of the site, and you can see how, sort of it's a notched square there. And we researched options out there that we could use that would take up less space first and foremost. So it would enable us to use additional space to actually build real life interactive sort of buildings that would have function outside of parking. And what we came up with was an automated storage system, which is essentially a Coke machine for cars. It carries a lot of advantages over a traditional deck, specifically with the lack of ramps and turn radiuses and that sort of thing that you would have needed for that. So we were able to squeeze it in a smaller space. It has environmental benefits in that once a car's inside, there's no emissions, which is a huge thing when you think about you're going to have over 100 cars in here. But then also it gave us the flexibility to squeeze a much larger number of cars in a smaller space. It's still a big footprint, but it enabled, as you can see, those red rectangles on the outsides that allowed us to put actual buildings there. And I think you're going to see when you look at the renderings that adds a real benefit to it. So we really essentially were able to squeeze the parking into the mid-block where you won't really see it. So you may wonder, how does the system work? Well, I'm about to show you. I've got a couple of diagrams, and then I'm going to show you a video. The first thing to note is that for a driver who's coming in to park in this facility, the real interaction happens in these two entry-exit bays for our system. There are two of them, and you can see them there. Those little squares are about 20 by 20, and that essentially is the bulk of the user interaction. Okay, a driver is going to drive in and be directed to drive in by, sort of a red light, green light, a symbol that says you can come into this particular bay. They'll drive in and they'll be guided by some lighting and other guides to tell them where to park exactly and to stop their car. Once they do that, they will shut off the engine, take the keys out, and walk outside to a kiosk that's just right outside the garage bay. And you can see here I've got two doors. I've symbolized them by green lines and red lines. A green line means the door is open, and a red line means the door is closed. So a driver walks out and interacts with that touch screen, confirms that nobody's in the car, that they have the keys, that the engine is off. The system does a quick analysis to confirm that there's no one in the car and that the car is of the right dimensions that will fit in the system, that they're not driving a tank in there, that sort of thing. And then we'll issue a ticket, and that's it for the driver. The driver will walk out and go about their business. Meanwhile, the system will shut the outer door and open the inner door. Now the car is secured inside the facility, and a dolly sort of system called a transfer car or a T-car will slide over, pick up the car, take it to one of the elevators, and then deposit it in its location until the driver comes back. When the driver does come back, they'll come to a kiosk and slide their card in there, pay for their parking, and while they do that, the T-car will go up, find the car, pull it back onto the dolly, bring it down and into one of these garage bays. So the process is essentially completely reversed, and then tell the driver your car is waiting for you at bay number 1 or 2. One last word before I get into the video to show you. There's a circle there inside those garage doors you can see with some arrows, and it looks like cars are turning. That's a part of the system that I think is really neat. You drive in straight, and the car will be turned 180 degrees before it comes back to you. So either at the beginning of the journey into the garage or at the end, depending on whether or not there's a long line waiting outside. The system will do that sort of algorithm and decide whether it's good to spend the time to do it then or later. But either way, you will retrieve your car and be able to drive straight out of the garage into the alley rather than having to back out. I think it's a really neat feature. So if you're wondering how we squeeze all the cars in there are, just for the record, 142 spaces right now that are designed in this car and in this facility, and they're all above grade. So you can see that the ceilings are quite low to comply with the height of a traditional SUV or car. You've got the widths and lengths associated with what you would expect, not a human driving in and opening their door and such, so you don't need those kinds of clearances, but rather the system can sort of shuffle the cars around, and just a minimum of space is required between them. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this video. So this is going to start as a car eye view, driver's eye view, and then go from there. So I'll walk you through it. Here's the outer door opening, as you can see, and the car is going to drive in. If you look to the left, you'll see this television screen that's kind of guiding the parker in, tells them to stop. So they've taken their keys and jumping out of the car. Meanwhile, from the inside of the garage, you can see the transfer car sliding over. There will be more than one of these in each garage to handle multiple cars at the same time. Here's the turntable turning the car. So you can see it doing that. And here's the real magic. There's this little device called a satellite that's basically a little remote control car. It's going to roll under the car, determine how long the wheelbase is, and then it's got these little bumpers that it swings out to lift the car just a few inches off the ground so that it can maneuver it back onto the transfer car and send it on its way. So the car is heading back onto the T-car. It's there now. The door shuts. The system can now accept another car into the bay, and off it goes. So it's headed onto the dolly, onto the elevator. It's headed up a floor. And incidentally, this system right here, this is in West Hollywood right now. There's an actual functioning garage. It's been there for a few years now. And this is laid out very similar to the way we have ours, which is one car on the back and two cars on the front. So you can really see this is almost exactly how this system will appear to the when we build this system in Alexandria. So the car's been parked, You can see the satellite's done that, and now we're going to fast forward. So the car's been requested to come back to the main door, and you can see exactly the same thing happening the other way around. The satellite has picked up the car, put it on the transfer car. It's headed back towards the elevator, and coming down in a minute. It's already been turned around, so there's no need for that to happen, and it's going to be deposited, into the garage bay, where the driver will be, told your car is waiting for you at, door number 2. So you can see it sliding right in there. And that's pretty much that. I think it's great to be able to show, not tell, an example like that. Even with the diagrams, a video like this can really help. So I just want to, I hope that was informative there, and certainly I'm sure we'll deal with Q&A about that afterwards. But that kind of concludes my half of this presentation for now. And what I'm going to do is pass you off to Mary Catherine, who is going to talk about the more specific details and show you a few of the renderings of each of these properties. And that's it. So take it away, Mary Catherine.
Thank you so much, Omar. As Omar said, my name is Mary Catherine Gibbs. I've been practicing land use in Alexandria for a little over 20 years. My partner and my father, Bud Hart, has been practicing even longer than that, and we're really excited to be participating in this project. I just wanted to start by saying, just to please bear with us as we all adjust to this new way of presenting information to the community and getting your feedback. I think we're all learning here. And as Omar said, this isn't replacing our community outreach. This is supplementing those contacts that will in the future have other ways to share information. But again, we just thought it was important to keep changing the way that we communicate so that we're keeping up with the circumstances of the day. We're going to be looking at this project from the ground level, but we wanted to give you where the perspectives were coming from. You can see South Henry Street is on the right, South Patrick is in the middle, King Street is along the bottom. We're going to show you 3 different views of the project from each of these perspectives at the ground level. And so in that vein, Omar, if you'll turn to the first perspective, that would be great. We're going to start with the South Henry Street side of the project. As you can see, a person is standing on the opposite side of South Henry Street. The red building on the right, that is the Virginia Tech building that's at the corner of Prince and South Henry and Prince Streets, for perspective. You can see the parking facility in the middle of the block that is masked by this mixed-use building in the front. And as you get to the other end of the alley, this is called Downham Way. The other end of the alley has a townhouse-style condominium building that masks that parking structure on the other side. Let's talk about the details of the project. There are approximately 19,000 square feet of new residential development here, 19 units total in this building as well as in the townhouse building on the other end, 16 in this building, 3 in the other building. There's about 1,500 square feet of retail on the first floor. The unit mix that I was talking about, the 16 units in this building, includes 2 residential units on the first floor in the sections that are blue and stone looking and in the building that you're looking at. But we are asking that those spaces be flexible so that they can be used as retail if there's a retailer considering the viability of retail these days is changing, could use those spaces as retail, but we're counting them as a flex residential space at the moment. We believe the addition of residents here and on King Street is actually going to enhance the livability of the area by adding 24/7 users to the neighborhood that will use retail and restaurants nearby. And we think that's really just going to be a nice asset to the community. In this project, we have about 20% open space on the ground level and on the rooftops. That is a modification request. You're usually supposed to have 40% open space. But the reason why we can't get to that 40% is because of the provision of that parking structure that you see there. It takes up a lot of space at the ground level, and it's been really difficult to capture the total amount of open space, so we're going to be asking for a modification of that. Let's move on to the South Patrick Street side. And as you can see, when we get to that, the South Patrick Street elevation also masks the parking structure that's in the middle of that alley. It's really a nice way to, as Omar said, to mask what is normally not a very attractive structure. This project, this thing has 3 units in this building right now, as those is a significant setback on the rooftop level. So you have some rooftop open space here, and you have some setbacks that help it relate to the buildings that are around it. Let's talk about the parking requirements here. The parking here is required in a range. A few years ago, the city changed their standards, and so now we have ranges for parking. So we need 17 to 33 spaces for the residential and retail users in this project. It's really important to note, as Omar said, they're providing 142 total spaces in the automated system. That number of spaces is divided as follows. There are 67 current surface parking spaces in the 2 lots that we're replacing, but we are making 85 spaces publicly available. So we have an increase of a little over 25% in the number of publicly available parking spaces in the area. And that leaves 57 other spaces that are available to the residential units in these 2 buildings, as well as the one on King Street. And that actually provides at least 1 space for every unit that we are proposing. And we think that's significant. The building height maximums in this area are 50 feet. We meet those requirements, but again, we have step backs on the 4th floor of both buildings in order to better relate to the buildings around us. We just think that that's a really good feature for the project. We also are utilizing significantly high quality materials on the facade to be compatible with the historic character of the neighborhood. Win Stanley Architects has significant experience working in Old Town, and so they are been able to really apply those standards to this project as well. Let's move on to the King Street project. We really believe that this new building is going to be an asset to this block of King Street. As you can see, the property is 1 property removed from the Firehouse Square property. The design of the building has been enhanced to create setbacks along one side of the building and on the 4th floor to better relate to the buildings around it. You can see in the gray portion of this building, there's someone standing up on the 4th floor. That's a pretty significant setback there. I think it's over 9 feet in order to create some really great rooftop open space there. There's also a notch that you can't see, and you'll see it later in the eastern elevation of the white portion of the building. That's a really helpful way to transition the building down. Well, let's talk about what this building is going to include and talk about the assets of the project. We believe that this building enhances the streetscape by adding retail available on this block, and again, adding vitality by creating new residences that are going to be able to add 24/7 vitality to use of retail, use of restaurants, things of that nature. This building is approximately 23,000 square feet. It has 30 residential units in it, and it has approximately 3,500 square feet of retail. And the size of this retail is actually really important. The width of the property is about 90 feet wide, and the lot is about 100 feet deep. And we provide the front half of that 1st floor, 40 to 50 feet in depth, as retail, which is an important number for retailers. Depending on market viability, if a tenant wants a deeper space for more back of house, say, we can then provide an additional 1,850 square feet of retail in the back so that we can add to the total amount of retail there. However, we're currently showing it as 3 residential flex units that back onto Downham Way. We think that the flexibility is really key. In this project, we actually provide 45% open space at the ground level and up on the rooftops. And we think that's really significant. We're going to be providing a ground level courtyard on the eastern side of the building. It's about 10 feet wide, and it's going to be, most of which is going to be publicly accessible, publicly available. So it'll be a space where people can meet, can congregate, can have an outdoor space. And Omar's going to go into more detail on what exactly might be in that space in a few minutes. But we think that's a significant component of the project. Let's talk about the parking for this project. We again have ranges like we had on the Henry Street side of the project. And in this project, we have a range of 28 to 39 spaces. But again, I'm going to reiterate some numbers because I think they're important. The new garage is 142 spaces in the automated facility. We are creating 85 of those spaces to be publicly available. Again, an increase of 25% over the number that are currently available. And we are providing all of the parking that's required in these buildings is also accommodated in that structure. So 57 other spaces are accommodating the parking requirements of this project. And again, this building is 50 feet in height with the different setbacks I described around the southeast corner and a large setback up the fourth story. We're utilizing high quality materials on the facade and the new courtyard in order to be compatible, again, with the historic nature of the community. And we will be going to the Board of Architectural Review because we are in Old Town. We had one concept review with them in January. We were getting ready to go back to them this Wednesday, but that obviously has been canceled. Excuse me. And we're looking to have that a later time in April, and we'll go into the details of that as we get to the end of the presentation. But with that, Omar, you wanted to get more into detail about the first floor and the ground level in this project.
Sure. Thank you, Mary Catherine. I just wanted to point out, as she was saying there, you look at that that rendering. It's I think it's gorgeous, and it really fits the sort of staccato kind of up and down of the neighborhood, and that variability as you look down the street. But it's hard to tell what that entry area and what the court that Mary Catherine was referring to really is going to look like. So let's show you just a kind of a draft image of what we think is one way that we can look at this. Again, we're sort of still kicking ideas around. This is a little bit early to really describe exactly how that corner is going to look, but just to share with all of you what's kind of going through our minds. So a couple of things to notice here. The red bricks on the left side, that's the smaller building of the Firehouse Square building or development there. First thing you'll notice is, again, the separation of these two buildings. We've taken the gray building, which is and I'm referring to them as buildings. It's actually one building that's designed in a way to appear like two buildings. That was a comment that we got back from the Board of Architectural Review. We also heard it from a few members of the community that building a single building here would be a sort of a little too massive from a massive scale perspective. So if we could break it up vertically, that would be preferable. And so we've looked at it, and what we think we've come back with is something that really works nicely. The white building that's closest in the foreground is actually stepped in the property by 1 foot, which really accentuates the appearance of the two buildings. As you look down the street, you'll see that gray building sort of poking out from the behind the white building there. Something that Mary Catherine didn't mention there about the retail is 3,600 square feet of retail on the front. It encompasses the entire frontage of this building, and I think this is a really great point of one of the things that Win Stanley Architects came up with. They've taken what would normally be a lobby on the front facade somewhere of the building and would take up a lot of space and reduce kind of the usable frontage of that block, and they've pushed it to the side, and you can see the awning of it there about midway back in that image. So I think it's actually really cool in one way, because a resident kind of has a little private place to kind of tuck in and go into their building and their unit. But also it presents this really great streetscape for retail and allows us to really maximize what we can offer to the community there. So I think that's a really brilliant decision that we went with early on. I have to credit them for that, and it enhances this project in a big way. A second thing I wanted to point out that's there is the notch that Mary Catherine was referring to. You can see it right there in the foreground. There's a rail there above the first floor. That's a terrace. And the step in is, I think it's something like 12 or 15 feet in one direction towards the back, and I think it's 6 feet in the other way. But it really adds a lot of light and a little bit of interest as well, and creates sort of a more welcoming feel to that front area that you can see, that sort of public space that's sitting there. In addition, towards the back of the building, you can see behind the awning, you can see some plantings there, and we intend, that's actually a bioretention facility that we're going to put sort of a rain garden there, and we'll surround it with some seating area, some sort of a bench top, so that you can go back there and sit, and above it we intend to install some sort of art installation, whether it be a mural, whether it be a sculpture or something else, to really provide some visual interest, so that when you're walking by, it's something that's going to catch your eye. It may be something you want to go back and explore. They talk about Instagrammable areas in cities these days as being a real draw. I didn't know this, but I was told the other day, and I looked it up, and it's brilliant. The Torpedo Factory has that loading garage door that's been painted all those vibrant colors, and you see a lot of people take pictures of that. And we want to try and make something of that ilk here that brings people to walk by and take a look at it. It just creates a lot of interest and adds something of sort of interest in that section of town. And I'll talk about this at the last bit. You can see a couple of stools there, and someone sitting at the corner there. This is really just a concept that we've been kicking around, but we thought it would be really cool if we could find a retailer that had a food use that could sort of work as a walk-up counter or a little bar, kind of something that you might see in London or in other parts of Europe, where it's just sort of tucked in. It's a little bit out of the way. The intention is not to convert that into dining space, that whole area. So the chair and the person you see in that sort of cafe seat over there by the red brick, that would not be part of the any sort of restaurant space. So this is a public space, but we thought it would be really cool to experiment that sort of walk-up counter option that's out there. And you're starting to see it in a couple of places in the district. I know Old Town has a walk-up counter, I think down further on King Street. And I really like that concept, and I think that it's a cool idea to kind of integrate, again, just one more reason for someone to kind of tuck in and spend a little time here on their way up or down the block. So with that, I think what I'll do is send it back to Mary Catherine to talk about some additional details of the project.
Thanks, Omar. We just wanted to end with some factors that we think were really important as to how we got to this part of the design, and other factors that we just think are important to note as we move forward. Again, we're increasing the public parking to 85 spaces that will be publicly available. Again, an increase of over 25% in the number of publicly available parking spaces here. The construction on this project is actually going to be phased to deliver that automated parking system first. You can't do any construction on King Street until that facility is ready and working. And we think that's really important, so that there's not as much of an interruption in the availability of the public spaces. So we thought that was really important. It provides additional retail and residential to complete this neighborhood. As we said, we think it's really important that it's both the additional residences and the additional retail that completes these two little portions of the really vibrant King Street retail corridor. Again, we are providing ground level public outdoor space on King Street as, you know, a space where people can gather that Omar just described. We think that that's a real asset for this part of the King Street. We're going to be making an affordable housing contribution in accordance with the city's policies, so that's going to be remaining in effect. We are incorporating sustainable design principles here. That's really important in Alexandria. And we're complying with the CD and the KR zones. We're not asking for any rezoning. CD means commercial downtown, KR means King Street retail, and so we just thought that that was an important component. And finally, as I said before, the high quality design and materials that are coming forward through Lynn Stanley Architects Office are really essential and really important components of this project. We are going to be going back to the Board of Architectural Review in order to have concept review of this. We hope that we're going to be heard at the April 22nd meeting. That all obviously is pending based on how things are going to be ended up going with the COVID-19 situation, and we'll keep everybody apprised of that. As it relates to the Planning Commission and City Council dates, what we're looking at now, hopefully, is summer review. That would be great. But again, everything is subject to the COVID-19 situation, and we will keep everyone apprised as to what those dates are, so that everybody knows when there's additional time for attendance at public hearings. With that, Omar, you want to go over how we're going to get input tonight and try to answer questions tonight and in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for everybody for tuning in to this point. I just, reiterate what Mary Catherine said, a couple of last points. First, there are, we're working through, an unusual situation, and we'll keep, adhering and working with the city according to their directives on how business is going to continue. And we certainly have enjoyed putting this together for you, and we hope that you've enjoyed it as well. And I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions that I'm seeing filter in now. So again, you can get in touch with us at kingstreetproject@outlook.com. You can send us a tweet at King Street Project or King ST Project. You can send us a text. I've seen a few texts roll in at 703 951 3998. And again, this video will be available after we conclude tonight. You can subscribe if you want to get a notification that when it gets posted officially. So with that, I think let's talk a little bit about the questions that are rolling in. And I actually have one or two that I think would be useful that I haven't seen in the question list here. I just want to put those in the mix as well, so people can kind of get a few questions answered that came up on at our previous meetings. One of them is, what do you do when the system, if you get a power outage? The parking system is an electrical system. So what happens if the power goes out? Well, the answer is, we have a number of redundancies to deal with, not just power outages, but any kind of system failure, because as we know, mechanical systems, they do that from time to time. So the first thing we have is we'll have a backup generator on site that will handle power outages. It won't make the system run at 100%, but it'll allow functioning, like orderly functioning of the parking garage, such that we can get through whatever system outage might occur during that time. Fortunately, we live in a part of the country we don't have a ton of those happening, but nonetheless, that's something that you have to account for. We also have the system monitored 24/7 at a site in Pennsylvania by the manufacturer themselves. And this actually provides a lot of really good value for us. One is that they're watching the overall use of the system so that they can handle preventative maintenance and proactive maintenance. So if they see something has had a number of uses that needs to get changed, they can come out and do that immediately. They also will probably see an error that occurs in the system before we will. So they'll be able to dispatch someone to handle that. If it requires a part being brought down, it can be brought down. They're about an hour and a half drive away. And they produce and manufacture all the systems for the company's products, which exist out in the original business is actually in Germany, and they're the U.S. outpost of that. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know people have asked that question before. Let me roll to... Oh, I should mention this, actually. Alexandria Living has sent me a tweet, so thank you for that. It says, just to clarify, it was not Alexandria Living magazine who said you were from Boise. Not sure who that was, but it definitely wasn't us. I think what I did was I went and I after reading that, because the description of the business says something to the effect of providing service and advice of capital, and that's I think that came off a website that was not us. It is so strange when I went out there and Googled Galena Capital that it turns out that there's this other company called Galena Capital that has very similar sort of logo as we do. It was such a strange experience to look at that, and that's why I found out that they were from Boise. I know you didn't say it explicitly, but thank you for that. Much appreciated, and absolutely respect to that organization. I read my Alexandria Living every time it gets delivered. Just want everybody to know that. So I don't see any email questions. I do see a number of text questions. So do we want to go through those, Mary Catherine?
Yeah.
You want to read one off for us?
Sure. Yeah, let's start with the first one. How long might a driver have to wait for their car at the garage? Is there a way to call, text ahead of time of picking up your car to have the system retrieve it for you more quickly?
That's a great question. So interestingly, these systems have a lot of flexibility, and I really, really like the kinds of options it can provide to drivers. As you know, the system is going to handle input from two different sources, you might say. One is going to be a retail parker. The other one is going to be a resident parker. So in the case of a resident, every resident would get sort of like a magnetic key fob that they could swipe on their way from the elevator, and the system would know that they're on their way back. It would also handle, app-based functionality, I believe. And there are a lot of different opportunities that we have to do to handle that. With respect to retail parkers, I don't know what tools are out there in explicitly speaking, but I believe that there are some things that might allow that. The trick is to handle a situation where a person says they're on their way back, and you don't come back as quickly as you say you will. We don't want the car to be sitting in a garage bay and slow everybody down that is there and trying to get their car out. So how to handle that, whether the system can slide it to a more accessible space, that's definitely something that it can do. And actually reshuffling cars within the garage to be more accessible is one of the great features of it. To answer your first question last, about the time to get your car out, it as you would imagine, it depends on where it is in the system. I think the quickest that it can get a car out is about 40 seconds, and the longest is about 4 or 5 minutes. And you can imagine that if you were to walk up from a concrete deck, if you ever drove to Shirlington and parked your car there next to where Carlisle is, you drive up there, you put your car in, you walk back down the stairs. That's probably a couple of minutes right there. We recognize very strongly that perception is going to be a very important part of this experience for those parkers that are going to be in there. And so if you're sitting in a chair waiting for your car for 3 or 4 minutes, that's a lot different than if you're actually motivating yourself up the stairs to the car and then driving out and paying the attendant and all of that, even though it might take the same amount of time. So we're working on ways to make it, I'll say, entertaining to wait for your car. But the general, I think the average time is about 2 minutes for it to go from the parking space down, when you average out all the spaces and how long it would take for those and all the situations in which the had to move a car to get your car, that sort of thing.
All right. The next question is, can you please say more about providing affordable housing law, city policy, excuse me, I think that's law, city policies. Are there affordable units planned in this development? How many? I'd be happy to answer that one. The city's affordable housing policy, as we're applying it in this project, is a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They have a calculation that they do for that. The final number is actually still in our discussions with the Office of Housing. But when this project, the RFP was taken to City Council, and when they approved the contract on it, the number that was the range that was stated then, I think it was like $192,000 of a contribution. And know that there are not units in this there are no affordable units in this project, but that contribution is going to be given to the city so that they can help in citywide affordable housing opportunities. Okay, let's keep going. The next one is, can you show and review the elevations from all 4 sides of both buildings, not just a few perspectives shown tonight?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that elevations like this that really show the integration of neighboring buildings and the properties, trees, people walking, they take a lot of time to produce. And I think as we get further along in the process, we'll be able to really show in good detail different images as we go along. So we don't have anything to show tonight, and maybe in the future we'll be able to do some more of that.
I'd also like to add, Omar, that the link that you have on your page to the city's development website is, in most cases, has a copy of the plans that have been submitted for review. And so we're going to refer people to that for fact sheets and the plans as they've been submitted. And the BAR that was just supposed to happen on Wednesday, those plans, I think, are readily available as well on the city's website.
Yeah,
so
and forgive
we can
me,
definitely at another time do more of those.
Yeah, forgive me. I've actually, what I just said, I was thinking, because I'm looking up at the screen and I can see the really super duper rendering that's sitting right there. That's what had in my head. This submission does have elevations from all 4 sides, and if you click on that development link, that elevation information that you're looking for will actually be there, so you can go directly there. So yeah, my apologies. I wasn't thinking about that. I was looking at this rendering and saying, "Gee, yeah, I'd love a lot of more perspectives like that too." But that's you're absolutely right. I was mistaken there.
Okay.
Now I remember
another question that we had.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You actually, if I recall, you got an email from someone who couldn't make it tonight, but asked you a question. Do you want to read that one out real quick?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. It was more of a comment, I think. It said, Old Town has wasted property time after time that should have been used for parking, and we are likely to do that again. Please, please avoid that and use this property for the way you are proposing. All of Carlisle and other parcels nearby King Street Metro have been gobbled up just because of developers. This time we have expanded parking. We should take it now. The time is right. This is the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that
That's
was a
great.
good comment that we could share. And we have another question on Twitter, not Twitter, on text.
Okay, if it's okay with
That
you,
is,
I'm gonna sprinkle in
yep,
one or two more that we got because I'm not seeing questions about these two things that I think are relevant also. Timing of approval and construction. You
yes.
know, we've gotten a lot of questions that refer to that, and the question is really down to the situation we're in right now. Right now, we're targeting to be out in front of Planning Commission sometime in the summer, but that's really going to be we're planning to be flexible based on how this stay in place orders that are out there and how business is able to operate during that time. So that's something that I think when you fast forward through that process and you get to the point of actual construction, we're talking about sometime in 2021 to begin the project, most likely, you know, with or without delays due to the virus situation that we have. And I think that, as Mary Catherine, I think you mentioned it a few slides ago, that also is a phased construction whereby the parking garage goes first, along with Henry Street development, and then King Street develops shortly thereafter. So that I think is, you know, I can't say exactly when King Street would come online, but I think that it's, as he said, the parking garage will be finished and open for business before King Street starts. So you can, you know, add a year and a little bit after the opening there to probably see both of them online. But we're basically talking about development through 2021 and 2022. One more thing I just wanted to mention out there also, the type of retail has been a big question that we've gotten multiple times, and I got it from somebody actually sent me an email again, said they could not join in today, but wanted to have that question discussed. I mean, what type of retail are we going for? National retailers and big box sort of types of people versus boutique retail. Well, the retail in these spaces is not quite big enough to feature, of course, a big box person, but national retailers, I think, would appreciate this space because of the height of the ceilings and the newness of the building. That said, we're absolutely not fixed on that. I think that Old Town, you know, has a very it's gone under some changes over the last several years where you've seen a lot of nationals move in, and some people like that, some people don't like that. I tend to be of the mind, having been someone who's lived here for 20 years, that we really could use a bit of both. That the boutique businesses are what make Old Town what it is, and give Alexandria as a destination a lot of character. The national retailers give it a shopping options that draw even more people in, and I think we could all use a bit of both of those things personally. But from our perspective, I think the real key is not so much, you know, how much square footage we offer, but what quality level of retail. And our goal is to produce the best quality retail we can here, and that's part of the reason why we've discussed some of the flexible options that we have out there. So I know that's not a sort of a here nor there when it comes to what type of retail, because it's a little bit early for us to be presenting that. We haven't reached out specifically to retailers yet, to any one person to say we really want you to be there, because it's still a few years away, and that's probably a little soon for most of them. But we will be in the next several months, and watch the space as news emerges over the next several months. We might have something to announce there. So
Okay.
let's see. I'm looking
Nathan,
at
do you
my
see any more questions
yeah.
on
I
Twitter?
think I do have. Let's see. Oh, I just saw one popped in. It said, "When is groundbreaking estimated?"
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I just addressed that one. I think we have a few more. I think it's gonna be this one. We've already repeated that one. I tell you what, I think at this point we're about an hour in. I think it probably makes sense to wrap up and collect questions and distribute those afterwards for everybody else that might not have made it in here. I just want to say thanks again to everybody that's participated tonight. I think it's a really good opportunity. And I would encourage you, please send us feedback about the actual format of this as much as the content of this presentation. I feel like this could be a real piece of the future that developers should use as they go, because let's face it, people have jobs, they have kids, they're caring for other loved ones, they work long hours, they commute. For a number of reasons, people can't participate in those kinds of community meetings, and I want to be able to include those people. I think our whole team would love to include as many people as possible and get as much feedback as possible. So please, if this was helpful to you, please send us a message and let us know that. We would love to know that. So I think with that, Mary Catherine, I think we're going to sign off right now. And please just watch this space. We'll make sure to publish questions that we got, all the comments that we got, and reply to those directly, as well as share them with the rest of you. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do this again. So good night to you all. See you later, Mary Catherine.
Thanks so much.